Well, it's that time of year again. Liverpool are in yet another cup final, and people all over the land are getting apoplectic with rage over Reds fans loudly booing the British National Anthem. It's been happening forever, yet people still don't understand, or they pretend not to understand, and they still act in shock, clutching their handbags in horror. So let's once yet again try and explain the reasoning around it. Firstly, this is not entirely a new phenomenon. As far back as 1965, when Liverpool would win their first ever FA Cup, Reds fans were doing it their way, changing the words to the national anthem to God Save Our Gracious Team. Now, this might be tamed by today's standards, but it's coming from the same place, one of nonconformity, self-confidence and a distrust of the establishment. This distrust went up during the 1980s. During the All Merseyside League and FA Cup finals in 1984, 1986 and 1989, the chanting of Merseyside, Merseyside by both sets of supporters was sung over the national anthem in a declaration of impudence and civic pride. In a time when the city's football teams provided respite from the grim realities of life in the 1980s under Tory rule. Non-compliance with the singing of the national anthem was seen as a protest at the establishment, and that establishment in the 1980s was Margaret Thatcher's Tory government. This is the establishment that purged Merseyside into a managed decline, purposefully withdrawing its support and finances to the area when it needed it the most. Thatcher's Chancellor, Geoffrey Howe, urged her to pursue this policy in secret, saying that the term should never be used, even in private. There are people out there that would tell you that managed decline never happened, as it wasn't an official policy. Now, as someone who grew up in Liverpool in the 1980s, I can categorically tell you that it happened, and your opinion without the lived experience is worthless. The 1980s would, of course, get even more difficult for the people of Liverpool. 97 people would eventually officially die of the effects of the Hillsborough disaster, with tens of thousands more affected, and this same establishment would instigate, conduct and maintain a cover-up of the disaster within minutes of it unfolding and lasting until the present day. 97 people have been deemed to be unlawfully killed, and to this day, not one person has spent a single day behind bars. And there are people getting angry over the peaceful protest of a song, rather than getting angry over the injustice of a monumental size, one that should invoke national shame no matter what football club you support or what background you have. But it never ends, does it? I could talk about the Sun's The Truth front page with Tory MP Irving Patnick passing lies from the South Yorkshire Police to the tabloid and only expressing regret when his name was revealed by the Hillsborough Independent panel. Then Sun editor Kelvin McKenzie has enjoyed a long and financially lucrative career of othering the most vulnerable people in our society. These same smears reverberated years later when future Tory Prime Minister Boris Johnson published similar comments about Liverpool supporters that are wholly inaccurate and highly offensive. Well, the lies, plain and simple, proven in a court of law. Johnson would also print comments about Liverpoolians wallowing in victim status. So what are we going to do? Do we complain about things? Do we stop these smears and abuse in the tracks? Do we say nothing? Do we peacefully protest when the national anthem plays? We can't win. These people want us to shut up and disappear, and they would want the same of you if you ever stepped out of line. Remember that. These instances aren't just rooted in the past either. The modern Tory rule and their ideological policy of austerity has made lives unbearable for many families, not just on Merseyside, but around the country as well. The Trussell Trust, the organisation that runs around 2/3 of the food banks in the UK, went from giving out just over 61,000 food parcels in 2010-2011, the first year of this government being in power, to 2.54 million just 10 years later. The food banks outside Anfield, Goodison and also other Premier League grounds is evidence of the widening inequalities in the country, and that anger against socio-economic inequality from the fan base from the city has increased. Yes, other areas of the country have been hard done by too, but that doesn't mean that the people of Merseyside should roll over and accept it. Why do other areas accept it? Well, that is up to them. It should be noted, however, that some other fan bases have booed the national anthem, a fact conveniently forgotten by those wishing to portray Liverpoolians as perennial victims. In the 2012 League Cup final when Liverpool played Cardiff City, the national anthem was not actually played because Cardiff fans had booed the anthem during their 2008 FA Cup final against Portsmouth. There were no anthems played in the Championship playoff final between Swansea and Reading, and also Cardiff's final with Blackpool in 2010 either. Cardiff and Swansea are, of course, Welsh. Now, Scouse Not English is a banner often seen on the cop and a phrase that seems to wind up the more patriotic parts of the UK. Now, it's sloganeering, of course, but it does have elements of truth to it. Many Liverpoolians believe themselves to be different, leaders not followers, more in common looking out to Dublin, Boston and New York than backwards towards London. This arrogance doesn't endear us to other parts of the population, but why should we care about that when fans from every dead-end town in England come to Anfield and instead of supporting their own team, lace the 90 minutes with tragedy chanting and misplaced poverty shaming? The permanently outraged, who year on year get shocked and surprised that other people do not share their fetishising of a flag and the useless virtues of patriotism and nationalism, have a big overlap with those cultural agitators obsessed with freedom of speech just as long as it never offends them. What could be more of a perfect protest than booing a song? It doesn't have a negative impact on the life of a single person, yet the sound of 50,000 people peacefully rallying against an establishment that has let down all of us in this country is the most beautiful sound in the world, and long may it continue.